way. And he is frustrated, he is disappointed, he is sad that this is not something that Republicans seem willing to engage on, to work on. And I think what you saw reflected last night is his view that in light of the tax on our democracy, what we've seen across the country in states and by state legislators, that it is time to have a conversation about what this looks like moving forward. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. The leader of the union representing FedEx, UPS, and DHL is saying that supply chain problems are going to get worse with labor shortages right before the holidays unless the president postpones the requirement to get vaccinated by December 8th. So what is more important to this president? The vaccine mandates or fixing the supply chain as fast as possible?
Well, first I would say that that is not actually what we've seen at companies that have implemented these vaccine requirements that are not even part of federal law yet. Let me just finish. I'm going to let you talk. Don't worry about it. I'm going to let you talk. Okay. So American and Southwest CEOs have made clear their workers will not be there won't be a labor shortage. We've seen United Airlines implement this, and as we've also said, as we work to implement these federal employee requirements, the first step is not firings. It's actually education and counseling. So we don't actually anticipate these disruptions. What we've seen for companies who have implemented these requirements is an increase from 20 to 90%. Last thing, and then I'll let you ask your follow-up, is that the other piece of this is that COVID is an enormous labor disruptor, not only because it's the number one cause of death in some industries and some professions, including police forces across the country, but because people are out sick, people are worried about coming to work. This is one of the reasons that a lot of these companies have implemented these requirements.
Just so that I understand the position then, this union leader says that the looming December 8th mandate for having fully vaccinated workforces creates a significant supply chain problem. You say no, it does not. Is that right?
What I would point to, Peter, is the evidence we've seen from companies, large companies, private sector companies that have implemented these requirements across the board.
Okay, following up on something else the president said last night, why did President Biden say he has been to the border?
Well, Peter, as you may have seen, there's been reporting that he did drive through the border when he was on the campaign trail in 2008, and he is certainly familiar with the fact, and it stuck with him, with the fact that in El Paso, the border goes right through the center of town. But what the most important thing everyone should know and understand is that the president has worked on these issues throughout his entire career and is well-versed in every aspect of our immigration system, including the border. That includes when he was vice president, and he went to Mexico and Central America 10 times to address border issues and talk about what we can do to reduce the number of migrants who are coming to the border. He worked in a bipartisan manner with senators like Ted Kennedy, Harry Reid, John McCain, and others to push for comprehensive immigration reform. He does not need a visit to the border to know what a mess was left by the last administration. That's his view.
Does that count as a visit? He said, I've been there before. You're saying he drove by for a few minutes. Does that count?
What is the root cause? Where are people coming from who are coming to the border, Peter?
The president said that
I'm asking you a question because I think people should understand the context.
No, you're
where do
answering
people
I'm asking you if that
Okay, I'll answer it for you. People come from Central America and Mexico to go to the border. The president has been to those countries 10 times to talk about border issues. There is a focus right now on a photo op. The president does not believe a photo op is the same as solutions.
But he said,
that may be a difference he has with Republicans.
But that's not what he said either. He said, I guess I should go down. So does he think that he needs a photo op? Is that what he's saying?
He doesn't. And that's a fundamental disagreement he has. I would say the former president went to the border at least once, maybe more. You may know the numbers. How did that immigration policy result, Peter? That immigration policy resulted in separating kids from their parents, building a border wall that's feckless and that costs billions of dollars for taxpayers. The president fundamentally disagrees on how we need to approach the immigration issue.
Anything changed at the border between 2008 when he drove by and 2021?
Aside from the fact that migrants are still coming to the border through the course of Democratic and Republican presidents, and the need to reform the immigration system is even farther long overdue, no. But we need to work with Democrats and Republicans to get that done. I think we're going to have to keep chugging along here. Go ahead.
Let me ask you, if I can, about gas prices. The president was asked about that. A lot of Americans have been concerned about the cost to go to the pump these days. He said, I don't see anything that's going to happen in the meantime that's going to significantly reduce gas prices. He said, I don't have a near-term answer? For Americans who are looking for an answer, what is the answer?
Well, what is true, and I think the president, as I said earlier, was quite candid last night, as the American people should expect from him, and from any president. And there are limitations to what any president can do as it relates to gas prices. Here's what we have been doing. As we've said for some time, we are engaging broadly with OPEC on our concerns at a range of levels. And that is something we will continue to do. As you know, Jake Sullivan, our national security advisor, recently met with leaders in Saudi Arabia and certainly raised this issue. The president has also been concerned, as the administration has been, about what we have seen as rises in supply that have not been accompanied by drops in cost. That's one of the reasons he's asked the FTC to look into price gouging, something that is no doubt impacting, or we expect might be impacting, the cost of gas around the country. So we are working and using every single lever he can, but I think what people heard from him is some candor about what impacts we can have.
He mused that he could go into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and that could bring the cost down. He said it would still be above $3. Will he do that?
I don't have anything to preview on that front at this point.
Let me ask you, does the White House have any response to the Supreme Court today saying that it's not going to block the Texas abortion ban, although it did grant an expedited review to take place, I think, by the start of November?
Well, I would naturally defer any particular questions about the Supreme Court decision in litigation to the Department of Justice. But what I can reiterate is that the president has been clear in his position that SB 8 is blatantly unconstitutional. It not only violates the right to safe and legal abortion established under Roe v. Wade, but it creates a scheme to allow private citizens to interfere with that right and to evade judicial review. That is why he's directed a whole of government response to it, and why he will continue to stand side by side with women across the country to protect their rights. But in terms of any litigation steps, I'd point to the Department of Justice.
But contingencies, if the Supreme Court is to uphold that present ban, what contingencies, what process takes place behind closed doors here at the White House to help look out for the women in that state?
Again, as you know, the Gender Policy Council and leaders there are leading the effort to work and see what levers in government we can use to continue to protect women's fundamental rights. We will see if there's an update on that to provide to all of you. Go ahead, Serena.
Afghanistan, thank you.
I'll come to you next.
Thank you. The attack on a military outpost in southern Syria this week did not result in any American casualties, but the U.S. military considers it to be a serious but failed attempt to take American lives. Do you know who's responsible, and what is the administration doing to prevent another attack or hold the perpetrators accountable?
I don't have any updates for you on the responsibility, and of course, what happened is something that is great concern to us. I have nothing to preview in terms of what additional steps would be.
Well, some governments, including U.S. partners in the region, have moved toward normalizing relations with the Assad regime. Has the administration directly urged its counterparts against doing so?
Nothing has changed about the U.S. position as it relates to the Assad regime. In terms of private diplomatic conversations, I'd point you to the State Department.
Lastly, because there was a broader review of sanctions policy by the Treasury Department that was released this week. It stated sanctions are most effective on a multilateral basis. So if other countries, including U.S. partners, are resuming diplomatic and commercial ties with Syria, does it not undermine U.S. sanctions, and what does the administration plan to do about it?
Say that last part one more time.
Does it not undermine U.S. sanctions if other partners are resuming diplomatic and commercial ties with the Assad regime? Is there anything the administration plans to do about that?
I don't have anything to preview for you at this point in time. I, again, would point you to the State Department. Our view of the Assad regime has not changed. I would note on the attack, which you asked me about, let me give you all a little bit more context on that. U.S. Central Command confirmed last night and put out a statement, or maybe it was earlier, sorry, that the Al-Tanf garrison area was subjected to a deliberate and coordinated attack. Initial reports indicate both unmanned aerial systems and rockets were used in the attack. All U.S. personnel have been accounted for. We're not aware of any injuries to U.S. personnel at this time. Of course, we always reserve the right to respond. As I noted, we have nothing to preview on that front, and we're still investigating. Go ahead.
Regarding kids and vaccines, a new poll is talking about 2/3 of parents with kids between 5 and 11. They're having a wait-and-see attitude, or they're resisting it altogether. And so what is the White House doing to combat that vaccine hesitancy amongst parents?
Well, first, I would note that we have experienced this before, because if you look back to December, only about 30% or just over that of people who are eligible for vaccines said they would want to take a vaccine. And now we're at nearly 80% of eligible adults or people who are of the eligible age who have now received their first dose. We have launched, and we announced the launch last week, or our intention to launch, a major campaign to communicate with parents, to communicate with families about the safety and the efficacy efficacy of these vaccines should they get approval. We will also be prepared to have the doses needed to ensure that parents can get vaccines to their kids. But what we're really focusing on is working with pediatricians. We know that the pediatricians are one of the most trusted sources of information for any parent. I can confirm that myself. And so we're really encouraging parents to talk to their pediatricians, of course, to wait for approval before they proceed, but to have those conversations, and that will be what our strategy is guided around.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Two questions. One is about the Moscow conference. The United States was not able to participate. What was the reason? Number two, NATO conference, any result? And number three, so many Afghan people, especially women, they are under torture of the Taliban, and they have high expectation from the United States. I don't know, you guys still committed to help Afghan people, or United States totally forget Afghan people?
Absolutely not. On the last piece, we remain absolutely committed to helping the Afghan people. We remain the largest provider of humanitarian assistance of any country in the world, and we're committed to ensuring there is the ability for people who want to leave to depart, ensuring there are flights that can depart to do that, or people can cross over land, and continue to work with reliable international organizations like the World Food Program to provide that assistance. In terms of the NATO conference, I know our Secretary of Defense spoke to that. I'd point you to his comments and his press conference on the ground. And on your first question, I know my colleague at the State Department, Ned Price, said that the United States supported the talks. We were unable to attend for logistical reasons. We believe the Troika Plus, which is what this forum or format is, has been an effective and constructive forum. We look forward to engaging that forum going forward, but we weren't in a position to be a part of it this week, but we will in the future. Go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify, you've been, earlier at the start of this, you talked about how universal pre-K, family leave, are those things that will definitely be in the bill? Because you're saying no matter what happens, it looks like we'll have at least this much. So I was just wondering, can you clarify, are those things definitely going to be in there? Are those red lines for the president?
I'm not here to set new red lines. What we know is that this is going to be the most historic investment in child care and in the care economy ever in history, and that there will be programs put in place that have not existed in the past. Hopefully we will know more soon what the final package looks like, but I just wanted to outline some of the key components that there's continued discussion about.
And I noticed you didn't mention Medicare expansion in that. Is that intentional? Why not?
It was not intentional. I was trying to give a couple of examples because sometimes we miss the historic comparison here on what we're talking about and what kind of a dramatic impact this package will have on families across the country and what it's tracking to be. There are still final pieces that need to be concluded, and I can't give you a final fact sheet quite yet, but that's what I wanted to lay out for all of you.
Another quick question. Does the White House have any thoughts on the Supreme Court? Yes, they're taking up the Texas abortion law, but they're not going to rule on the constitutionality of it. Does the White House have any thoughts on that?
I would, beyond what I said to Peter, I don't have anything additional from here. I'd point you to the Department of Justice. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Just to follow up on the Medicare expansion, do you have any updates? President Biden addressed some of these discussions last night, and whether this will be an actual expansion or vouchers for things such as dental work. Is there any update in those discussions?
Not yet. He talked a little bit, for those of you who didn't watch the town hall last night, from 8 to 9:30. He talked a little bit about how he wants to, his objective of working to bring down the cost. So I think you're referring, just to translate for everybody to bring them up, he talked a little bit about the possibility of vouchers for dental, something that's in discussion, but there's no new information I can provide to all of you. He also talked about the hearing aids and bringing down the cost of hearing aids, and bringing that cost down and addressing it for seniors is a huge priority to him. He also mentioned last night how when you look at seniors and what they're struggling with, including dementia, that hearing and the ability to hear is an important priority. Still in discussion, clearly a priority to a number of key leaders in the Senate, but there's not a final conclusion before I came out here today.
Along those lines, Nancy Pelosi, who I believe had breakfast here this morning.
She did. She was here. I'm not sure what they ate, but they met, so yes.
She indicated that a climate deal was close and suggested it could be done. Has the White House and congressional Democrats identified any substitute for the Clean Energy Performance Program that looks to be removed at Joe Manchin's request? And if so, what is it?
Well, the president talked a little bit last night about the fact that, and I would say it's still on track to be, because there are so many climate components in these two packages that the president has proposed, including climate tax credits and tax cuts, which have been a part of his proposal, has broad support in the Senate. There are also key components, since you gave me the opportunity, that have been in the infrastructure plan that often we don't talk enough about, including moving toward electric vehicles, 500,000 charging stations across the country, which would be a huge impact, have a big impact in moving toward an industry that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Replacing lead pipes in water. I think many of you may have seen today that the state of Michigan issued a state of emergency because of lead in pipes. This is an area and a place that has a climate impact, that has a humane impact. These are all components that are under discussion, and obviously the infrastructure pieces have passed, but continue to be a part of what the president's proposed. But addressing the climate, making this the largest climate bill in history, we're continue to be on track toward that.
Just lastly, the president last night said he would entertain the notion of doing away with the filibuster to pass voting rights, and then he added, and maybe more. What's the maybe more?
Stay tuned. It's to have a discussion. I expect you'll hear more from the president about it in the coming weeks. Go ahead.
Matt took my climate question, but
That's okay. You can
ask.
ask it in a different way. Okay.
On immigration, though, the president said yesterday that the administration's stance is that it is opposed to MPP, the Remain in Mexico policy, but there's a court order, and you're implementing that court order right now. But even with that court order addressed a previous memo the administration issued to terminate MPP. It's been months since this court order, and there's still no new memo out.
And
why is that?
Secretary Mayorkas has indicated he plans to issue a new memo, and that we do oppose the MPP program, as the president said last night. I would point you to the Department of Homeland Security on an update on the status.
Given that he is saying the administration is opposed and he's criticized us in the past, it seems like there's not a sense of urgency to get this memo out since it's been months.
I wouldn't agree with that. I think we've been clear about our opposition to this, but again, there was a court order. So what we're working to do is move toward the release of a new memorandum, something that would come from the Department of Homeland Security, and while also abiding in good faith by a court order and following the law.
I have a follow-up on Afghanistan,
Sure.
too. Just given that the embassy is currently closed right now in Kabul as well, if you're an Afghan and you still are hoping to find relief and come to the U.S., is there any way to actually get parole or refugee status without going to a third country?
Well, we have a presence in Doha, one that engages with officials on the ground. We've also had recent meetings with leaders of the Taliban, as you all know, and has been reported publicly. And our State Department is leading this effort. So yes, absolutely there is. We have worked to help individuals who have stood by our side and fought by our side over the course 2 months since we left. We ended our military presence there. We've put out, I know the State Department put out numbers on U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents who have departed from Kabul. We wouldn't be able to do that unless we had the diplomatic presence in Doha and were able to engage with and work with authorities on the ground. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Last night also the president said that paid leave was down to 4 weeks. When he said that, did he mean that it would be a permanent program and that it wouldn't